Kidney stones, and then they were going to put a tube in there to open up the pathway because she had a blockage. So when they put the stent in, when they went in, they hit pus came out and infected all in her, so they rushed her to the emergency room. Meanwhile, the surgeon's like, well, the stent's in, the flow's good now, but now we're going to deal with infection. I'm like, how long were we? Like 4 months ago. And I'm like, what? Like I'm
yeah, it's 2 months out. You have to medical and stuff is so backed up. That's a bit. People who were kids, they all know that.
I'm thinking, my daughter, she's thinking about what we're wearing. I'm going to tell her. Be a vet. Be,
Oh, vet.
be a vet. I just paid for 2 dogs in the last couple months over $5,000. And now, well, I have insurance on one, so I have it on me right here. So as the one, so nationwide insurance, of all the money, this one gave me $750, and this one gave me $180, but it still cost me out of pocket. It's $1,500. I go, why do I have insurance if this is all again?
That was easy, huh?
I'm a long-time friend of Beth. And through Beth, obviously, I met cousin Tony stuff, right, for years, and it's been a long time. And it was, okay. And it was, yeah. And then obviously with her girls, they were real babies. Like when we first got married, my wife and I got married, the girls were in our, like, Jasmine and Jazz.
I know, right? It's always dangerous.
How you doing?
Yeah, I didn't know it.
You're doing great. You look good.
Yeah, right? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I know I said I just called him.
Yeah.
We were the ones that got the wheelchair. He was at my house for dinner.
I'm Janine, and this is Pam.
You don't have to.
I know, right? But it's like, I feel bad, but at the same time, I would have.
I know, I was trying to get to you early, but everybody was like all chatting and everything, and I was looking for Nancy and I got to you. Hi again. Yeah, Uncle Don Hartman and her, Colin and Declan Giandomenico. What's that? It's on the phone. We got it.
Yeah, I wanted to come up.
I know, I saw you across the room. Like, I know Aunt Beth said she was picking you up this morning at 5. We had talked about actually us doing it, but she said, I know.
Glad you were able to find. So we're actually talking to Ashley out there. We could go pick her up. One.
Yeah, so you'll get to today on like, coffee and maybe a power nap when nobody's looking. Oh, I do a cup of coffee in the morning and then I mostly drink tea. I went to bed early last night. Just unheard of. So it's like, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're just getting everything.
Yeah, it's like 9:30.
I know, I was trying to yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, it's like, people are creative and anyway, they're art, artistic, like, we all start getting inspired at like 10 o'clock at night. Right, yeah. Or 3 a.m. Yeah. Wake up call. Oh, lots of times. When we were still driving for hours, driving the road and everything, we come home from work at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd sit up and like watch TV or watch movies or whatever from 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
I've had a couple times I walk in the door at like 6 a.m., 6:30, and I'm like, oh, I may as well just go wake up Declan for school.
Yeah, actually, well, the oldest isn't here. He's working. Colin and Declan aren't here. They were over there. They might be out in the lobby. There they are. Yeah, Colin is 6'7". You can't miss him. He's got a red and black plaid shirt. And then Declan is tall. He's 16 now, but he's like 6'4" and change. Tells you how he's wanted to. And then in the meantime, two of us are sitting there like, would you give me any gas? Right. Would you give me any grease? And they're like a foot taller.
Driving for a car service, I see that all the time. Basically, what they do is they take off lanes. It doesn't mess up the wrong time. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense for those of us who have to work on the schedule. It's like I don't really, I just drove these people and they're coming around and I gotta get back to the airport.
Oh yeah, we'll have to chat some more.
have a few chairs right up front here if anybody needs a seat. There's a couple chairs over here, a couple chairs over here. In a few moments, we're going to start the services for Glenn. A lot of us have cell phones. I ask that we take a moment to silence them somehow so they do not interrupt the services. Jim Daly will be presiding the services today, and Beth is going to begin, I believe, or you? I'll begin. Okay, Jim's going to begin first.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here to help celebrate Glenn's life. I spoke to Beth for quite a while on the phone last night, and we had a great conversation, and I was telling her that when Glenn's wife, Lorraine passed, I had the great opportunity, and the sad opportunity of course, but to meet Glenn. And it always seemed like when Glenn came to bring different items to the funeral home and leading up to the funeral, that I was the one in the office each time that he came. So we had some great, deep conversations. He was a good guy, and I'm sorry that he was a guy that I didn't hang out with, because I would have loved to hang out with him. And the words that he spoke, he truly meant. He was a very sincere person, and my heart was really breaking for him when Lorraine passed, and it was a really rough time for him. And I was glad that we could just sit and talk and let him get a lot of things off his chest. And I really became very happy speaking with him, and that's why I said to Beth, I enjoyed his conversations, and we talked about the most craziest off-the-wall stuff, and a lot about music, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the service started, and then we're going to have Glenn's sister Beth come up and speak, and then there's going to be some music selections and other speakers, and then at the end of that I'll close the service, and then we'll continue at the cemetery. So what I know about Glenn. I know he was born September 20th, 1961. On the day he was born, John Kennedy lived in the White House, and the #1 song was Take Good Care of My Baby by Bobby V. Glenn was a true family man. He loved his wife Lorraine, and they loved the daughter they lost, Celina. He was a good husband, brother, uncle, and dad for 37 days. Glenn didn't always have it easy. He had a rough bringing up, rough childhood, but he turned his life around, didn't let things that happened to him affect him, and he became a good man. He proudly served in the U.S. Navy. He loved to cook. And Beth said he made sure everybody wanted to know that he was a food safety certified. And if you invited him over for a picnic or something, you better make sure the potato salad had been refrigerated properly before he arrived. He was a movie buff. There's a movie out that came out, I think it was 2017, that I thought of when Beth and I were talking. It was called The Lady in the Van with Maggie Smith, and it's a comedy. It's really, really funny. And we talked about Glenn decided to get a van, and the van is parked outside here, and travel around in the van. And I refer to him as the man in the band now. He got to see many places that he wanted to see. He was enjoying life, something many of us don't get a chance to do. And if you didn't know, he liked this band called Toto. We spoke quite a bit about Toto. And Beth was telling me, there's certain people that can feel the music when it plays. And Glenn could feel the music as it played. It was his happy place, and it gave him peace and made him very happy. He became a YouTube blogger, and I'm sure most of the information was correct that he was giving, because Beth said he was a meticulous note taker. He was a dreamer that believed in fantasy. He loved to do things on his own terms. He enjoyed speaking with people. He enjoyed being with friends and family. And he enjoyed going to concerts. It's very hard for any of us to turn the page in the book of life when somebody that we love is not going to be in the next chapter. But the way that we keep that person's memory alive is to talk about them often, to keep them in our conversations. In my house, there's always an empty chair or two at the big dining room table for people that we've lost. And we talk about those people as if they were in those chairs. We tell funny stories. We talk about crazy times. And those stories usually start a little somber with maybe tears in our eyes. But by the time we're done, we're all laughing so hard that the tears are streaming down our face. And that's what Glenn, I'm sure, would want each and every one of you to do, is to keep his memory alive and talk about the fun times. Talk about the great times and the fond memories. So I'm going to pause for a moment while we're talking about memories. I want to bring Beth up, and we'll start with the speakers. And then when the speakers are all done, I'll have some more to say.
Bear with me here, because I've written this like 500 times and scratched it off like 499. So whatever I say is whatever didn't get cut. But good morning, and thank you all for being with us today to celebrate my brother's life. I've spent the days since he's left us literally obsessing over how to best honor him, and if you were my friend, I'm so sorry because you heard about it. I hope when we part ways today that you feel you either know Glenn a little bit better, or that we did him great honor today. I do have to share, I am one of Glenn's 8 siblings, 5 of which I have no relation to. I can explain that later. Don, don't pipe up. He and I had the same mother, as do our other siblings, Don and Dan. Most people would say Glenn was my half-brother. We never said that. Unless, of course, we needed to explain the insanity of our immediate family tree. Most of our childhoods, we lived in different homes from each other, but our mother always did her best to bring us together. For the 4 of us, our time apart never mattered. As Don pointed out to me recently, it doesn't matter where we are, when the last time was we spoke, or what the nature of that conversation was, we have each other's backs. Plainly put, we're family, and we help one another should any of us need it. When Glenn's health started becoming more troublesome this past fall, I invited him to move in with me. This was a brave undertaking for us both. He and I had many differences, and at times did not see eye to eye. And if you know Glenn, you know what that meant. Right, Kenny? However, we did have plenty of interests in common. Some I knew previously, others I learned while we lived together. And of course, I've had some surprises in sorting through his things over the last 2 weeks. Between us, Glenn has been known as the more emotional one, and me, the pragmatist. But in reflecting, I've realized he was actually far more pragmatic than I ever noticed before. He was definitely feeling and sharing his feelings, but he was also willing to do things that would give him those feelings. My brother was brave. Case in point, excuse me, at 60-something years old, creating a YouTube channel to share his travels across the country in a camper van when he couldn't find decent and affordable housing after Lorraine passed. When Glenn left on his maiden voyage, I had given him a leather-bound journal with a quote embossed on the front by Henry David Thoreau, and that is behind me. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined. This was a space Glenn and I could agree in. The adventure, the autonomy, and the freedom to craft each day as you see fit. My brother was embarking on nirvana. Glenn used this journal to document his van life journey with precision. Locations, dates, times, and mileage were all there. He even titled it Captain's Log. And I thank him for making me laugh when I opened it up. The time, though, was entered in military style, of course, being the proper sailor that he was. The only thing he did screw up, I might say, just because I'm the sister and have to point this out, he really should have used the word star date instead of date. I mean, if he was really going to be proper. But Glenn clearly fancied himself the captain of his ship. When Dan and Janine and I were going over music for today, there was a distinct running theme through most, if not all of it, in a lot of Glenn's favorite music. Also, just again pointing out what a Star Trek, Star Wars, and every other sci-fi story fan he was, which always has a ship captain, albeit a starship, but a ship. Thinking of this, it's really no surprise he decided to embark on his van life adventure, even though he wasn't in the best shape to do so. A short time ago, Glenn had explained to me something about his relationship to music. Jim had touched on this. He told me he had synesthesia. He didn't know the word, of course, until he described it to Lorraine, who was a teacher and, of course, knew had a name for what he was experiencing. Glenn saw colors when he listened to music, and yes, he felt it. If you ever saw him really intently listening to music, you could see it wasn't just an auditory experience for him, it was a whole body one. Every sense was engaged. To honor his unique ability, we are sharing some music with you today that Glenn really loved. I hope you listen to it and think about how Glenn literally felt each strum, beat, and chime while resonating so hard with many of the lyrics. Now I want to leave you with some final thoughts, not mine, but Glenn's own words. Back in the fall, I bought Glenn another journal. I knew my brother was emotional, so I bought him journals. This one is a little different. It was...
Sorry. I know where we're going.
Yeah. It was meant to get a chuckle. The front of the journal, I know we have children here, so I'm not going to say it. I will hold it up and hopefully you can read it. It says, bleep, I'm dead, now what? Inside are prompts and charts so Glenn could leave me detailed information about anything I might need in managing his final affairs. Seeing how our family leans into dark humor, we both thought this was actually hysterical. However, apparently the joke was really on me because Glenn filled in exactly none of the information I needed. And if it weren't for my daughter, Gab, for helping me break into his phone, we might not even be here today. Anyway, Glenn did write in the space allotted for a forward, of course, being the wanting to be director, producer. So both my daughter and I were so moved by the words he wrote that I wanted to share them with you. And a portion of them are on the remembrance card. But bear with me here, my brother's writing was a little rough. I want to thank you for taking this time to explore these pages, a part of my life that I leave behind. This journal contains fragments of my thoughts, moments of joy, sadness, confusion, and everything in between. It holds not only my personal information for my sister Beth, no it does not, but also pieces of my soul, reflections of the journey that I called my life. Know that this is not a perfect record. It isn't meant to be. It's raw, honest, and filled with imperfections that make me who I was. At times, you may find it difficult to understand what I was thinking, but that's okay. Life is complex, and so is mine. Personally, I don't think many understood me at all. As you read, I hope you'll not only see my life, but also reflect on your own. Cherish the moments you have, forgive the mistakes you have made, and never stop seeking purpose, even in the smallest things. Most importantly, always appreciate those you love. You won't get another chance to make it count. Above all, know that I lived, I loved, and I tried to be a good person. Take care of yourself and your own story. Much love and gratitude. Glenn M. Ryan, Jr. Thank you.
Go far enough, and you will reach a place between you and me. I really don't think she knows where she's going at all. You have your special way. The day I started, you have your special way. Come on to my no, no, no.
So forgive me, everyone. I'm going to be largely riffing. My name's Jasmine. I'm one of Glenn's nieces, for those of you who don't know me. My mom asked if I'd be interested and willing and able to speak, and I thought I'd do my best to honor my uncle and hopefully relate some things that not many of you know, but clearly he was an open book. Everything my mom said, I feel like I got a resounding nod from everyone in the room, so he wasn't shy about letting everyone know what he was about, which is actually one of the things I admired about him. My uncle's passing has brought out many different emotions and unearthed many memories, and much of this is bittersweet. I say that because, as cliche as it is, he's not suffering anymore. We know he was suffering in his physical body for quite some time. And that brings me comfort that he's no longer suffering. But losing an uncle, in a way, it feels a bit premature. It's hard, it's sad, no matter the relief that comes with knowing that he's not suffering and that he's reunited with my Aunt Lorraine and their angel baby, Celina Joy. Sorry. I'm gonna get a little woo-woo with it. Uncle Glenn's soul has gone to the next stop. It's no longer animating his physical body. Death doesn't and hasn't scared me. I know it didn't scare my uncle either. I know this because I've had the privilege of speaking very frankly and candidly with him about this topic. At a young age, Death and I brushed shoulders. It whispered in my ear and spared me several more times, as it has with my uncle. So we didn't really have your typical uncle to niece conversation. He had similar run-ins with death. After all, we both struggled with heart conditions for a large portion of our lives. This common thread became the bedrock of our relationship in an enriching and powerful way, gave us language that we could speak to each other with, we both uniquely understood. We all knew, or the two of us knew, and hopefully all of us here know, that we're a part of something much bigger than ourselves. We all belong to a singular collective consciousness, is one of our shared beliefs. The universe is experiencing itself through each and every one of us. Now I know this is all a bit heady, but I asked myself how I could best honor my uncle at his funeral. And I think he would want me to spread that message of oneness to everyone here. There's a quote that I particularly love from Ram Dass. He's a spiritual teacher, leans a little bit more to the Buddhist end of things. He says we are all just walking each other home. I feel honored to have gotten to walk my uncle home, especially in the later period of his life. He was living with my mom. I got to see other sides of him. I have all these memories that are so beautiful and so fun, and lessons that I've learned from him. To be unapologetically yourself, lean into your weird, whatever it is. You want to role play in a game night, go for it. You want to grab the microphone at karaoke, tomorrow's not promised, do it. And of course your phone's going off now. Of all people, my God. But I'll always carry with me my uncle through my eyes. My uncle through my eyes was a man who wasn't going to be defined by all the adversities. I try to live by that same ethos. He was always going to invest in whatever made his soul happy. He was going to buy that van. He was going to take that trip. He was going to write that thing. He was going to get after it. I admired it. And I'll always remember being that little girl in the back of the limousine. And taking me to see movies. See with you, Uncle Dan. And I think that's all I had. I just wanted to thank everyone for hearing my ramble. Nothing poetic to close out, just be good to one another and love you all.
Is Dan next?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. Where's the mic?
To your right shoulder. You don't have to hold it, it's there.
It's on a stand.
All right, just wanted to make sure it was pointing towards me.
We're not musicians.
Yeah.
Where's the mic?
And the sound man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of you who came through the receiving line found out that currently I'm blind, so I didn't take notes. My notes are up here, and part of it's written in invisible ink, so I'll do what I can. As has been said multiple times, music was very important to my brother. Really to our whole family. It started with our mother, Kathy Zinman. Beautiful soprano voice. She sang in the church choir, including having solos. My fondest memory of her singing is Christmas Eve. She would sing "O Holy Night" in French. She learned it phonetically. She didn't actually speak French, but just sounded beautiful. And her love of music inspired the rest of us. Glenn, he took me to my first concert when I was 12. He was 16. He saw the Cars. And he also introduced me to the music of Genesis, taking me to see them live as well. So many things musically we've done together. When I learned to play guitar, and he was playing guitar as well, I would go to visit him, bring my guitar along, and this songbook, Hits of the 70s, was about 2 inches thick. And eventually I think we played every song in that book, playing and singing together. And another thing might seem like a diversion in the conversation here, but my mom was a member of the Louis Shearer Chorale, if anybody's ever heard of it. But she brought me into that, and well, it turns out that another woman who was part of it brought her granddaughter into it, Janine Patterson, who I ended up dating. And I know I'm talking about myself, but there was a connection here. It turns out that our story became part of Glenn's story. So Janine and I dated for a little while. She broke it off with me for reasons that, don't have to say, but no, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Well, some almost 20 years later, she finds me on classmates.com, and we start dating again. And the first time we dated, Glenn and I, we had periods of time through the years where he would just go off, disappear, and do other things, and we didn't have contact with him. So while I was dating Janine the first time, he was gone. I couldn't introduce them. Well, I introduced them when Janine and I started dating again. We met up with Glenn for karaoke at the Tower Tavern in Westville. And, Janine mentioned this to several people in the line, but while they're sitting there talking, they're finishing each other's sentences. And Janine thinks, well, I've got a friend that I've known since high school that we finish each other's sentences. I think I could introduce the two of them. They could probably get along. Well, a week or two later, she brings her friend Lorraine out to karaoke. Lorraine drove herself because she had to get up to teach the next morning and thought she might leave early. We all stayed till the end of the night, and it was Lorraine who said she would drive Glenn home. They ended up talking for several more hours. She never got to sleep before she had to go to school the next morning. And they talked some more on the phone after that, and they were inseparable at that point. And most of you know that side of the story. So yeah, I think it's interesting that you say God is the ultimate chess master. He moved our pieces so that Glenn could have Lorraine in his life. And I mean, he's had other relationships before, he had another marriage before, but his relationship with Lorraine was so special, so pure. Even losing their daughter, their love, never lost any strength. I don't know what else to say. While we had our ups and downs through the years, I do love my brother. I've always loved him, love all of my family. And my hope is that he is there in heaven with Lorraine and Celina now. No pain, no worries, just being there in the presence of God. So, thank you.
We moved to
Hi. My name is Erik, and for a short time in 2019, I had the privilege of, I guess, being Glenn's pastor. But I'll tell you what, he became my friend, and it's really neat. I started at Crossroads Church in Chemung in 2019, and people introduced me. They said, "Hey, have you met Lorraine and Glenn yet?" I said, "No." They're like, "Just so you know, Glenn's a really big classic rock fan. You might like him." I'm like, "Oh, I like classic rock. You ever heard of that band Toto?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Like, "He's got a Toto tattoo." And I was like, "Sure." I thought it was a joke. And then I'm like, "Dude, you know that band Toto?" He's like, "Yeah." "You don't have a tattoo, do you?" He's like, "Oh yeah, right here." He showed it. We really hit it off, actually, over the Chemung diner, and lots of diners he and I like to eat together and have long talks. Long talks. A lot of you guys know the long talks with Glenn. It was the fall of, it was October 2019, and we had a Friday night dinner at the church, and Lorraine and I were playing together, and just to give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of pastor I am, I brought in some Bon Jovi and some Tom Petty. I think our last song was a Journey song, and Lorraine was looking at me crazy because she had all these worship songs, and she wanted to sing Chris Tomlin and stuff. I'm like, "Oh, I thought we were doing Bon Jovi." So anyway, I don't know how good of an influence I was on her versus me, but it is what it is. The word, it's so weird. Hang with me here. The word that comes to my mind when I think about my relationship with Glenn and what I want to share today is the word tension. And tension could be a bad thing, but in the case of my relationship with Glenn, it wasn't a bad thing. It was a very good thing. There's a picture of he and I in the car, and I was on our way to the Count Basie Theater to see Toto at Red Bank, which is close to where I grew up, and this is where I got this backstage VIP pass, which, by the way, believe it or not, it's so weird. I've had this on my back of my bedroom door ever since. And I couldn't, I mean, I love Toto, the whole thing, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, I gotta wear this today. So anyway, Glenn and I would have these long conversations, and we would disagree on a lot of things. Shocking. But there was a lot of love and a lot of respect at the same time. I mean, I was more of a Star Wars guy, he was more of a Star Trek guy, but he knew more about Star Wars than I ever did, and so I'm like, what am I gonna do? But we had a lot of things in common, and a lot of things we disagreed on, but it was, you know, faith and all of that, and I'm trying to, it's like having that pizza place in town that you want just in the share, no, and he had a pizza place in town that he wanted to share with me, and so the tension is like when you want something really good for somebody and they want something really good for you, and you're like, I respect you, I love you. We get in 2025 when people are just so segregated over it, everything. It was cool to have a relationship with my friend Glenn and have a difference of opinion on a lot of things, and yet have a lot of love and respect for each other. And I always appreciated that. And so I think that was a little bit of the tension that's there, but a good tension. So yes, I had the privilege of sharing at Lorraine's funeral. Glenn asked me if I would, and I shared a little bit about my view on faith. I told the story. Some people call it the prodigal son story. I call it the good father story, because there was a story Jesus told of a dad who had two sons, and one son kind of disowned his dad and went off and had this wild living thing, and then he kind of hit rock bottom and decided to come back home, and thought that dad was going to berate him and then put him down. But instead, he came running to him and lifted him up and threw a party for him. And then there was another son, and he thought he could keep it all together, and he was kind of mad at Dad that Dad would have this kind of forgiveness for the second son. And Dad says, "Hey, you've been here the whole time. You could be so close, and you miss my heart at the same time." And I think he had a compassion, the dad in the story, for both of these two sons. And I wanted to share that story with Glenn. He knew it well. He would try to share with me about his faith with the cosmos, and I don't know if I had the understanding for it, to be honest. Glenn had a brain that was beyond what I could comprehend sometimes, but he was excited to share it with me, and I was excited to hear about it. And we talked about it a lot on our way to the Count Basie Theater, and I didn't really get the Toto thing that much until he would share all the songs with me. And then I was in line with all the other Toto fans, and I saw there's a whole community here. And they're good people. And I started to get it a little bit, and I started to understand community that much more at that level. So, anyway, one quick story. Again, I don't know how I ended up being the guy, but he was supposed to go with Lorraine. Lorraine passed away. He had backstage passes to meet Steve Lukather and the whole band, and he asked me if I would go. And guys, honestly, man of faith, I'm just praying, can something really cool happen? Can something really cool happen? So we meet the band, and that's really cool. And then they have the warm-ups, and they do the question and answer time. And some of you know where we're going with this. And they said, well, I didn't have any question. And Glenn's hand goes up in the air, and he's like, I got a question. And I was praying that this might happen. I said, what's your question? He says, can I come up on the stage and sing with you? And I'm like, sorry, I thought you said, can you sing with us? He's like, yeah, can I sing with you? And look, all right, bring him up on the stage. And so Glenn comes up on the stage, and he starts singing, and of course he nailed it. It was so good. And that was where that picture came from. And I have a condition too. I call it leaky eye syndrome. My eyes just gave up. I couldn't even see half the time because I was seeing Glenn singing with Toto and Steve Lukather. I'm like, wow, this is an awesome answer to prayer. So anyway, over many coffees, over many diner meals, over many things, I really love that man. And again, even though he will always be to me a guy where I can think about how we can disagree on things and have a lot of love and respect and just care for each other. So it brings me back to that word tension again. When you want something for somebody, and I thought of another way where we see tension. That's in a guitar string. A guitar string is stretched between two things, or a piano string for that matter, and you have that little hammers that hit it. And what happens when you have the right amount of tension, beautiful music can happen. And when I think about my friendship with Glenn, I'll always think about just the beautiful music and what can happen when you really love and bless each other. And so maybe that's the encouragement for us today. I love what you had to say about community and oneness, right? Maybe we can take a lesson and set aside some of the lesser things and think, well, we could celebrate together and how we can come together. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. What an honor and a blessing to be able to share. And love you, brother.
In every size, some are wise and some otherwise. They got pretty blue eyes. For now a man may change. For now her face looks strange, looks strange, looks strange. Marching to the promised land, where the honey flows and takes you by the hand, pulls you down on your knees, while you're down a pool like this. The face in the water looks up, she shakes her head as if to say that it's the last time you'll look like today. Sail away, it goes never come back. Gone to face that launched 1,000 ships is sinking fast. That happens, you know. The water gets below. Seems not very long ago. Lovely as she was than any that I know. Angels never know it's time. close the book and gracefully decline. The song has found a tale. My, what a jealous fool is she. The face in the water looks up. She shakes her head as if to say that the bluebells have all gone away.
Don't worry, Jay, I'll be quick. I probably, sitting here and listening to everybody, I realized that I probably knew Glenn the least of everybody in the shortest period of time. But I will say that technically he kind of sort of lived with me for a while. His van was parked in our parking lot at our office for a little while, which was a blast, because if I wanted to see Glenn, I'd just stay late at work and he would eventually show up. So, I took the easy way out. I have a friend that's a poet, and he helped me write a poem, which I'm going to try to get through here, so bear with me. Glenn Ryan died when he was just 63, and I've been asked to share what he meant to me. Though a short time I've known him, we quickly did bond. We shared our own quirks and were mutually fond. He traveled through his life on earth in unconventional ways. An epic van journey lasted many hundreds of days. He kept a detailed captain's log to commemorate his campaign, but when it came to finding it, who knows where it had lain. He wanted to make movies, and he was working on a book, and it was in the Navy where he learned that he could cook. What he learned in the service, the talent carried through, and when he had served his time, he knew just what to do. Glenn then served some people as a personal chef. He chopped and cut and cooked some food with hands that were so deft. This fervent fan of Toto, whose 2 songs you have heard, he knew their whole catalog, could sing it word by word. There was lots of other entertainment he'd enjoy, like sci-fi films and comedies, where one girl meets a boy. What began as what's Glenn driving became what's driving Glenn. And even if he told you, he'd be glad to tell you again. You see, Glenn was not a stranger to sharing his strong views. He was happy to debate the Bible and politicians' news. This man who lived authentically, lived life in his own way, could appreciate your differences and brighten up your day. His van became a symbol of the life that he would live, a man you just could not ignore, the love that he would give. When you hear some Toto or watch a van go by, think of dear Glenn Ryan and suffer not to cry. The life he lived, impressions made, stay here upon this world, and Glenn is reunited with his dear beloved girls. Preceded in death by both his daughter and his wife, Glenn made the most of what he had in living of his life. And so, take his example of living your identity. Be bold, be brave, be truly you for the whole world to see. As you consider what you have that you're trying to hide, think of what he might do. Do you have Glenn inside? And so I thank you all right here for this poem following along. I'll end my time with you now in this parodied song. And this is, I was going to try and sing it, I really was. But I'm not going to.
Do it. I was supposed to have it queued up for a real song if you want that before.
No, that's okay.
Whatever you wanna do.
I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't know Toto or
Yeah.
Africa, or would admit it here anyway. So I'll just read it, and hopefully it makes sense. Heard on the radio tonight, what you hear is rumors about a man named Glenn Ryan. He made an impact on my life. His fervent, strong compassion leads you to till he has your buy-in. I saw an old van on my way, hoping it stirred up old forgotten words of dear sweet memories. Glenn turned to me as if to say, hey there friend, I'm always there for you. It's going to take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that my death or life could ever do. I bless my friend known as Glenn Ryan. Going to take some time to thank the God whom we debated. The mourners cry out in the night as we grow restless, longing for some more Glenn Ryan company. I know that I must do what's right. Sure as Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus above the Serengeti, I seek within me, deep inside, trying to improve the man that I've become. It's going to take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that my simple life, or simple death or life could ever do. I bless my friend known as Glenn Ryan. Going to take some time to thank the God whom we debated. Hurry, Glenn is waiting there for you. It's going to take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that my simple death or life could ever do. I bless my friend known as Glenn Ryan. I'm going to take some time to thank the God whom we debated. Thanks.
Okay, we don't need that now. Got that. Wrong. We don't need that. That was supposed to be before Scott's part, so we got it. Maybe are you gonna sing? Sorry, Glenn. Sing it.
Unlike Scott, I was not even planning to attempt to sing anything. Nor was I planning to try to speak over Toto, which would be a mortal sin to Glenn. But good morning again. My name is Jay Francoeur. I'm the pastor of Cultivate Church. I've had the privilege of being in Glenn's life for a long time, but since he's kind of come back from his journey of van life, he was part of our community for the last 3 or 4 years yet again. So it's my honor to share some thoughts this morning about my dear friend, Glenn. I've known Glenn for 18 years. It's hard to believe that I've known him for that long until you start to do the math, and then you realize, wow, it really has been that long. And I met him along with Lorraine when they were pregnant with their daughter, Celina. Which, if you know Glenn's story, you know that I met him at a pretty momentous point in his life, a seismic shift, a turning point for him. It was a season that Glenn's worldview went through a massive shift as he reckoned with the pain of losing his precious daughter and how a God of love could allow such a thing to occur. Glenn's story, as we've said already, I think, is complicated. It's multifaceted. It doesn't fit neatly into any one box. And that's part of what I loved about Glenn, is part of what you've all shared about him too. So when Beth asked me if there was any passage that resonated with him, it was tricky to find something that didn't feel forced. Because over the years we've talked about numerous parts of the Bible, and he always let me know exactly what he thought, because of course he did. That was Glenn. But I landed on Romans 5 after reflecting on the time since he came back into my life and into our community at Cultivate as a man who was softer, wiser, deeper than I had remembered him before. And I was reflecting on some of the changes that I saw in him. So I'd like to share this with you. Romans 5 verses 1 to 5 says, "Therefore, since we've been made right through the faithfulness of our Lord Jesus Christ, we have peace with God. We have access by this faith into a grace in which we stand through him, and we revel in the hope of God's glory. But not only that, we even take pride in our suffering, because we know that troubles produce endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. This hope doesn't put us to shame, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." Now, I realize at first glance this passage might not seem like it fits Glenn and his experiences of life. I'll give you that. And that seems strange to me at first too. Because it seems to be talking about people who don't have the kinds of questions that he had, or the doubts that he faced, or the way that he saw the world. But I'd like to suggest today that that through all the ups and downs, Glenn developed a kind of faith, a kind of hope, and a kind of love that is actually reflected in these verses. Maybe in an unorthodox way, but there nonetheless. So let me just share briefly on each one. Faith. If faith is blind obedience to a God that you don't understand or can't relate to, then yes, this doesn't fit Glenn. It doesn't fit me either. I doubt it fits many of you. But I'd argue that that's not actual faith. Because faith throughout God's story is seen in places like Mary with her brother Lazarus. I don't know if you remember that story, but Lazarus died. Lazarus' sister asked if Jesus would come and heal him. Jesus delayed for whatever reason, didn't show up until 4 days later when he was already dead. And after sitting with her dead brother Lazarus for 4 days, Jesus finally shows up. She goes out of the house and shouts in his face, "If you had only been here, my brother would not have died." This is not the kind of thing that we typically think of as acceptable to say to God. And yet Martha shows us something that I think our friend Glenn knew well. Because "where have you been" was a whole mood for Glenn. If you didn't show up, he let you know it. And in his purview, there were many times in his story that God didn't show up. In fact, that was sort of the defining question of this transitional period in his life. God, if you were there, where have you been? Where were you when Celina was suffering so? Where were you when Lorraine was taken too soon? Where were you when my health started to fail me? We needed you, and you're about 4 days too late, damn it. I think there are many good religious Christian people who feel like faith means being satisfied with spiritual platitudes and emotional gaslighting. Don't be too honest. Only say Christian swear words. Press on and everything will be all right. But Glenn was intellectually honest enough to reject every and any answer that minimized his pain or dismissed his grief. He wasn't having it. Glenn wasn't afraid to let God have it either. To demand that God put his words into action. And I want to suggest that this way of living takes far greater faith than faking it till you make it. I admire my friend Glenn for that. He taught me and a lot of other people not to settle for a trivial faith that doesn't wrestle with the real questions of life. And I'm not the only person who honors that kind of persistence. It turns out that God does too. That he's not afraid of our questions or our doubts or our disparaging remarks. In fact, we see in Jesus that God welcomes these kinds of things. It's those who were the most honest, like Martha, that got the furthest with Jesus. Finally, someone who isn't hiding behind their pat answers and their flimsy traditions. And that was Glenn to a T. He didn't hide behind anything. So that's faith. What about hope? Well, again, we might feel that this is a mismatch because we all know that Glenn could be a bit of a Debbie Downer. Am I too bold to say that?
No.
Sometimes. But hope isn't pie in the sky. Hope isn't positivity. Hope embraces pain and sadness. It embraces it. Hope believes that suffering has a work to do that only it can do in us. And Glenn was clear-eyed about the state of the world, wasn't he? He didn't sugarcoat anything. In fact, he could recognize the suffering of other people because he knew it in himself. He had this superpower, that many of you know, where people who were lonely, people who were on the margins, people who were in pain, they were drawn to Glenn. In part because I think they knew that he would receive them without condemnation and just allow them to be who they were as they were. Yeah? And this acceptance of others, it brought people hope. If you don't believe me, go and ask the late shift at Cracker Barrel.
Or the early morning shift.
Or the early morning. Amen. Yeah. So, even though his objections about Christianity and the Bible, they're well known, those things didn't stop him from continuing to press into community, press into our church. As we reconnected with him these last few years, he'd come on Sundays, he'd come on Wednesdays, and he'd bring all of his questions and curiosity, not to mention his vast pop culture knowledge. But he did more than show up. We talk about the kind of world that God wants to build, a world of justice and mercy and equity for everyone, starting at the bottom with the poor and the marginalized. We pray things like, God, would your kingdom come and your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. Make this place better. And it turned out that after everything he'd been through, Glenn still wanted those very things to be true of this world. And he knew enough people, folks like himself, who needed a better world. And he never gave up on trying to make this world better, here and now. That's hope, friends. And then, this is the easy one, is love. That what Glenn wanted more than anything, for as long as that I knew him, was for people in his life to be a resonating witness for everything that he went through. To be surrounded by people who honored his pain, supported him in his grief, rejoiced with him in his victories, supported the plans that he had made for himself. In other words, he wanted a community of friends who were as faithful to him as he was and tried to be for other people. And one of the reasons I think he went through such a radical change in his faith is that he felt like he didn't find many of those things in the church. Glenn endured half a lifetime of Christians saying well-meaning but ultimately emotionally hollow and spiritually damaging things in the name of trying to help someone through their pain. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I was one of those people. One of the things I learned about Glenn this last year was that he was actually in the midst of writing a book to guide family and friends on how to attend and attune to others' grieving in the grieving process in ways that don't amplify their pain. And when we talked about the motivations for this book, it was clear he wasn't writing this book out of spite or bitterness, but he wanted to give grieving people and those who love them a gift so that other suffering people wouldn't have to endure the added pain that he had faced. That they would be surrounded by people who knew how to give appropriate, healthy support. That's love. That's love. Faith, hope, and love endured in Glenn Ryan. Not in a clean-cut way, but through the muck and the mess of actual life. Glenn and I had talked at several points about sitting down at some point to plan out his funeral, but we never got that opportunity. And just to be honest with you, I think in some subconscious way, I was sort of avoiding the issue. Not because I wasn't willing, but because I knew that he was going to tell me all the things that he didn't want me to say. And I figured if I didn't actually hear what he didn't want me to say, then I wouldn't. I could claim ignorance and not, know the things that he didn't want me to say. So I hope I'm not out of turn as I say this, because I say it out of a deep sense of love for my friend. That one of the reasons that Glenn said that he had sort of given up on God was because he felt like God had given up on him. That if you had only been here. And Romans 5 says that we have peace with God not because we do such a great job of holding on to him, not because we never walk away or ask tough questions, but because through it all, Jesus is a faithful friend to us. And that's what Glenn wanted, faithful friendship. So my hope is today that in the face of God, in the company of Lorraine and Celina and others who love him, that our friend, our brother Glenn, has discovered once and forever that God never did give up on him. That God has been his steady, co-suffering advocate all along, a resonating witness who never turned his back on Glenn even now. That God is a champion of those who show the kind of faith that Glenn had and desperately wanted, but had all along. Thank you.
well, I want to thank everyone that spoke and all of you for sitting here and listening and remembering Glenn with us today. As we wrap up, I'm just going to do a very mean thing and point out that I made a website for my brother, and I'll just keep working on and adding content of Glenn singing and his van travels and his pictures and adventures. And so, Beth, I know there's a QR code you can scan throughout the building. But seriously, I have one more story to share. That is of, oh, this is going to be hard. I'm going to need tissues, actually.
Give you the whole box. Oh, just a couple. One more. Nope.
I have one more story to share. Some of you have heard this, of Glenn's last moments. So, if you didn't know, Glenn was in and out of the hospital a lot, and then was supposed to be hopefully getting a heart transplant, and that idea kind of went south as he his test for cancer came back positive for prostate cancer, and then things just started kind of snowballing downhill as they tried to do little patch things to get Glenn strong enough to get the cancer treatment, and then ultimately, hopefully, a new heart or a heart pump device to give him a few more years. Midway through his hospital stay, Glenn had a ventilator in and couldn't really communicate. So I started playing music on my visits and asked the nurses to also do that to keep his spirits up, and I left them his favorite bands and playlists and stuff. On one of my visits, a song came on that I knew was amongst his favorites. And although he had this ventilator in and he was really in and out of consciousness, not very aware, his whole face changed. Like he had been twisted in pain, and just this beautiful sense of peace came over him. So on my very last visit, I walked into Glenn's room to check on him, and again, a very Beth thing. I have two phones, two cell phones. I left one phone in the room, and the staff wanted to take me into another room and start talking to me about Glenn's situation and making him more comfortable versus trying to save my brother's life, because the quality was not going to be very good. So I left on, because not only was Toto a thing in the Genesis and Yes that we heard, but yacht rock. Yacht rock, Glenn loves his yacht rock. And it was a space that we completely disagreed on, so I thought it was my big sisterly concession. Leaving you with yacht rock, brother. So I left the room with the staff, and we were away from the room for quite a while. When I came back in the room, Earth, Wind, and Fire, that I happen to love, was on, but it was so not appropriate for what was going on and what I thought Glenn would want to hear. So I started approaching the phone, and Jay and Erik, I'm sure you're going to love this. And I didn't even make it to the phone before the song changed to Glenn's absolute favorite yacht rock song of all time, which is what we're going to be listening to now as we close. And at that point, I just walked over to him and touched him and let him know it was okay to go, that his pain was over and he could be with his family again. And he was actually really peaceful and comfortable. And I'd like to believe sailing on to his next adventure.
Well, it's not far down to paradise. At least it's not for me. If the wind is right, you can sail away and find tranquility. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. It's not far to Never Land. No reason to pretend. And if the wind is right, you can find the joy of innocence again. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. Sailing takes me away to where I've always wanted it. Just a dream of the wind that carried me. Soon I will be free. Fantasy beats the best of me when I'm sailing. All caught up in the reverie. Every word is a symphony. Won't you believe me? Sailing takes me away to where I've always wanted it. Just a dream of the wind to carry me. Soon I will be free. Well, it's not far back to Santa Fe. At least it's not for me. And if the wind is right, you can sail away and find serenity. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Can you believe me? Sailing takes me away to where I've always needed to be. Just a dream of the wind to carry me. Soon I will be free.
Thank you to everyone who spoke. It was beautiful. What you guys couldn't see, when you were looking at me and we just started the last song, is I can see the monitor in the back and see the pictures that were changing. And Beth, you said this was one of his absolute favorite songs. And just as the song came on, the pictures turned, and there was a big picture of Glenn smiling with his finger up number one. Things happen for a reason. You know, by listening to everyone speak, we know that Glenn lived a life of compassion. He was a very kind and gentle soul. We need more people like Glenn in the world. You know, life is just a brief intermission between life and between birth and death. What you do and how you choose to live your life speaks volumes. The famous composer, Mozart, said it is not the music notes that make the music, but it's the space between the notes. And I go a step further and I say, you know, you think about when you're in a cemetery, where we'll be shortly, and you look at all the stones And there's 2 dates on the stones. A date of birth and a date of death. And again, what's between them is a space. That space is your life. And Glenn certainly filled his space with joy and love and compassion and a lot of laughter. He lived life on his own terms. You know, if Glenn were here today, he'd look at everybody and he'd say, please don't remember with sadness and tears, but remember the laughter that we all share throughout the years. And I know that he would be content because he would know along the way of his life, he made somebody smile. When you're walking down the street and you've got Glenn on your mind, just keep in mind, he's just a couple footsteps behind. You can shed tears because he's gone, or you can smile because he lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or your heart can be full because of the love you shared with him. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live in yesterday, or you can be happy tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember only that he is gone, or you can cherish Glenn's memory and let him live on. You can cry and close your mind and be empty and turn your back, or simply do what Glenn would want you to do, is just smile and love him back. You know, Glenn gave you gifts that you are unaware of, that came natural to him. He gave you the gift of strength. He gave you the gift of faith. He gave you the gift of hope. He gave you the gift of laughter. He gave you the gift of compassion. And he taught you how to endure great pain. He taught you how to care for others. He knew the joy in caring for people. He gave you the courage to stand up for what you believed in, even though sometimes you may have stood alone. He gave you the strength to admit your wrongs. He gave you the wisdom to speak and the wisdom to know when it was time to stay silent. These are precious gifts that Glenn shared with you. Cherish them always. You know, there's going to come a time soon when you're going to hear a song that you know Glenn liked. You're going to pass a Cracker Barrel that you know he loved. Something's going to trigger a memory, and you're going to immediately think of Glenn. It's just human nature. It happens to every one of us every day. And I will tell you, and this is a true story, so when I had met Glenn, and we did a lot of talking about music, because I'm a huge music buff, and we talked about different bands that we liked and all. From the day I met him until today, every time I hear Africa by Toto, I think of Glenn. And Glenn, I mean, even though he was still around, I just thought of him because of the deep conversations that we had talking about the music that he loved. So when you hear that song, when you see something or hear something that you know Glenn liked, that associates you with Glenn, you're going to think of him. And I promise you that it's going to bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eyes. And before we go, life has just changed for Glenn now. He's taking a different path. He's more than just a memory today. He is not gone forever from your lives. He's just out of your sight. And I don't like to use the word gone. I just like to think of him as out of sight. We just can't see him right now. And I like to use the analogy, we all know how big, like a big cruise ship is, or a fishing vessel, or we look up in the sky and you see a big plane going by. And every time we look up and we see that airplane, or we look out into the ocean and we see that ship going by, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then eventually the last time we look up, we no longer see it and we say, it's gone. Well, we know it's not gone. We just can't see it right now. So that's how Glenn is today. He'll be out of our sight for a little while, but we're taught from children that someday we will be reunited And just think of all the great stories that we'll have for him and the great stories he'll have for us when we were on the other side of each other. Before we head over to the cemetery, Michael's going to have a couple announcements. And usually this is where I would say that I wish you comfort and peace, and that you go forth in the name of the Lord. But in honor of Glenn today, I just say, rock on, brother.
Thank you, Jim. As Jim mentioned, we now have to make our way over to Locustwood Memorial Park for the final services. We will be having a funeral procession going to the cemetery. Our staff made an attempt to put funeral flags or stickers on your car. If you're going with us, please also help me by having your lights on, your high beams, and your four-way flashers. That'll help me keep everybody in the funeral procession. After Locustwood, I'm asked to extend an invitation for everybody to return to Tutti Toscanos. Toscani.
Yeah.
You know I get that wrong. So that's following Locustwood. That's where everybody's welcome back. We all have smartphones. We can look it up on our smartphone to go to the restaurant. Gather our belongings. We'll make our way out to our cars. The pallbearers I'll need out on the porch area. Thank you.
I understand some of this. Yeah. So deep. You know, yes. It didn't take much though. You got, I mean, like, deep soul with opinions. I do remember the storage place to get her stuff, and I was there for some reason, sitting outside looking at the car. And I don't know the conversation we had was just like something in the world. Yeah, it was in a good way.